Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us on today's Survey and Spatial webinar titled Understanding Te Ao Maori and Connecting to the Land. Our presenter today is Natalia Wee. She is the founding director of ARCO Academy, an organisation dedicated to lifting cultural confidence and competence in Te Ao Māori. She has worked with learners of all ages and has experience in both mainstream and kura kapapa Māori environments, but in the last 4 years has supported adult learners. She's extremely passionate about helping more people learn about Te Ao Māori and takes great joy in supporting individuals and organisations grow cultural confidence and capability. As most of you online today will know, if you have any questions at all throughout this presentation, please pop them into the Q&A box and our presenter will answer these for you. So I'd now like to hand over to Natalia.
Kia ora koutou, Maori ora kia koutou. I will just start us off with the karakia before introducing myself formally. If you know this karakia, please feel free to say the words with me. Ngā mihi, tū tawa mai I runga, tū tawa mai I raro, tū tawa mai I roto, tū tawa mai I waho. Kia tau ai te Maori tū, kia tau ai te Maori ora ki te katoa, haumi e, hui e, tai ki e. Ka rawe, neira te mihi kia koutou katoa, he uri tēnei no te au pauri, Ngāti Kuri, Ngāti Pro me te atanga haweti, ko Natalia Wee tōku ingoa. So kia ora to everybody, my name's Natalia Wee. I'm from the very, very far north, Te Au Pauri Ngāti Kuri. Our ancestors are the guardians of Te Rerenga Wairua, the very sacred space where the Wairua, the spirits depart Aotearoa, and also the East Coast. Would love to know where everybody is coming in from today, so please feel free to put that in the comments in the chat. Would love to know where you are based today as we do this webinar. So kia ora. Today I am talking about Te Ao Māori and connection to the whenua or land. There'll be some keywords that we will go over, but first off we have some learning outcomes, and the whole point of today's webinar is to understand key concepts around Te Ao Māori, the Māori world, including whakapapa, genealogy, mana, kaitiakitanga. We want to recognise historical and cultural significance of whenua, of the land, and Māori identity and well-being, and identify Māori-led approaches to land stewardship and sustainability in contemporary Aotearoa, New Zealand. Ka pai. So here are some keywords and concepts that you will hear as we go through this webinar. And even though I can't see or hear you at the moment, what I'm going to do is just invite you to have a go at saying these words, these kupu, after I say them to become more familiar with them. Ka pai. So first we have Te Ao Māori. Give that a go wherever you are in Aotearoa. Te Ao Māori. And when I say Te Ao Māori, I'm referring to the Māori world physically or the Māori world view, the perspective. Ka pai. Next kupu, next keyword we have is whenua. Whenua. Whenua is the land, and whenua also means placenta, and we'll talk about that a little later on in this webinar. We then have the word whakapapa, whakapapa, and whakapapa is genealogy. So where we descend from, our ancestors. Mana. We quite often hear this word mana in Aotearoa, in contemporary Aotearoa. And when I say mana, I'm referring to integrity and respect. Kaitiakitanga. Kaitiakitanga. Kaitiakitanga, you may have heard this word before. It's about stewardship and protection for our environment. Maori. Maori. Maori is the life force of all living things, and we will discuss Maori later on in this webinar. And lastly, wairua. Wairua. Wairua is the spiritual essence of living things, and we'll discuss wairua later on as well. So hopefully you've learned some new kupu or become familiar with ones that you have known previously. Ka pai, te ao Maori. Let's kick into it. So when I talk about te ao Maori can translate to the Maori world. It's both Maori society and the Maori perspective that we see the world, shaped by our unique heritage, our stories that have been passed down through generations, as we do in all cultures, our
Hi everyone, sorry, we just seem to be having a couple of technical hitches here with the sound. If you just bear with us, we will try and get this sorted. Thank you.
Ka pai. Sorry about that. I'm not too sure what happened there. So what I was saying was, in cultures, what we have is our perspective, the way that we view the world, the way that we engage with the world and one another, that is passed down through our stories. Our values are within our stories, our rich history, and our values become our actions, so our customs and our tikanga. Ka pai. So we're going to have a little dive into this today. When we look at te ao Māori, the historical context behind te ao Māori, Māori have links back to the Pacific and even further into Taiwan, and arrived here in Aotearoa around the year 1200 AD. As you can imagine, coming from the Pacific, they would have had to engage with a completely new environment in terms of the weather, the terrain, food, etc. And over their time here, about 400 years, they then become their own people with their own customs and culture, but still a very strong connection back to the Pacific. The foundation of pre-European society was kaupapa Māori, so it was led by Māori values, and that was heavily influenced to the connection to the taiao or the environment. We see this when we do pepeha, which is a very unique Māori concept of declaration to landmarks of significance that are passed down through bloodlines. And we're going to talk about pepeha a little bit more in depth later on. Whakatauki or proverbs also hold wisdom of the land and how it's been handed down through generations, and it gives us insight into the perspective, the worldview of our ancestors. We see the influence of the close ties of Māori to the whenua, the land, through our creation story. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the Māori creation story, there are different versions to the story. So perhaps you have heard one of them, but more widely known is Ranginui, the Sky Father, and Papatuanuku, the Earth Mother, who were held in a very close embrace, and in between them lived their many, many children in the darkness. And so one day their son, Tane Mahuta, the god of the forest, was a little bit fed up living in this darkness between his parents, and he decided to push his legs up against his father and push his parents apart, and that's how light entered the world. So as you can see through the Maori creation story, the elements of our environment, our natural world, are often personified as gods. So we have Tane Mahuta, the god of the forest, Tangaroa, the god of the sea, Tāwhirimatea, the god of the wind. There are many different gods, atua Māori, and elements of our environment. And this is the foundation of importance of the environment, the taiao to Māori. Māori don't see themselves as separate to the environment, and they see that their hauora, their well-being, is directly linked to the well-being of the whenua, the land. Ka pai. So let's dive into our kaupapa Māori principles. So perhaps you might have heard of some kaupapa Māori, Māori guiding principles in Te Ao Māori, the Māori world. There are many, but today I wanted to just share a few with you. So firstly, we have manaakitanga, and so feel free to say this out loud as well as I'm saying it and repeat, manaakitanga. And so the idea of manaakitanga, it's quite often translated to hospitality. But what I like to talk about when I talk about manaakitanga is that manaakitanga in the Māori worldview is about mutual hospitality. So hospitality can mean different things in different cultures and different families. In Te Ao Māori, manaakitanga is about mutual hospitality. So rather than being hosted and waited on, it's about collaborative hospitality. So the guest is cooperative and collaborative with the host as well. So in terms of manaakitanga, that's what it looks like in Te Ao Māori. And while I'm going through these principles, also I want you to think about what this could look like in action. Next up, we have whanaungatanga. Whanaungatanga. And so you might recognize the word whānau in that word whanaungatanga. And whanaungatanga is about connectedness. So when we started this webinar, we had a little bit of whanaungatanga. You were getting to know me. Unfortunately, I can't see you all. So also encouraging that whanaungatanga by saying, hey, put in the chat where you are today. Where are you based? And that's a way of me getting to understand you all. So whanaungatanga, it's about connectedness. It's about making relationships, kinship connections. Quite often in Te Ao Māori, when we meet someone for the first time, one of the first things we say is, where are you from? No hea koe, where are you from? And we want to know where people are from so we can create that connection with them. Ka pai. Next we have kai te akitanga. Kai te akitanga. And kai te akitanga is about stewardship. That's one of the purposes of this webinar today. It's about stewardship. It's about connection to the land, and also our responsibility to look after the environment, to ensure that we're good stewards, that we can pass this resource and land down to our future generations, and we can leave it in a good condition for them so it can also sustain them. Ka pai. Next we have kotahitanga. Kotahitanga. Kotahitanga is about oneness. It's about acting with a shared vision and doing things together. So here are just a few kaupapa Māori or guiding principles that help to, that are the foundation of Te Ao Māori, the Māori world. So when we are thinking about the Māori worldview and Maori perspectives, these kaupapa, these principles, help to guide that. So a reflection that I want to leave you with in regards to kaupapa is, when have you seen these kaupapa in action? So perhaps this could be at work, within the home, within your community. I'm sure we've all got examples of this here in Aotearoa. Awesome, great to see we've got some people coming in from Rotorua. Ngā mihi nui kia koutou. Ka pai. So I wanted to talk about whakapapa and whenua. We talked about these keywords before. Whakapapa, genealogy, whenua, land. So this is all about connection to the land. So here we have a beautiful picture. This is one of my maunga on the east coast, Te Tai Rāwhiti, maunga Hekurangi, and this is one of my beautiful awa, Waiapu. So one practice that we do in Te Ao Māori is introducing ourselves through pepeha. And so I spoke briefly about pepeha. Pepeha, in my opinion, is a very, very unique Māori concept where we create connections and make declarations to significant landmarks that are passed down through bloodline. So my grandmother grew up on the beautiful east coast of Aotearoa, and she grew up underneath Maunga Hekurangi, this mountain here, and she grew up visiting Waiapu, the river. So my connection to that mountain and river is through her, through my whakapapa, my genealogy to her. Normally, pepeha follows the waterways. So we will start with a maunga, a mountain. We will then go down to an awa, a river. Then we may go out to a moana, a sea. We will then talk about a waka, a canoe, a marae, a meeting place, and then our iwi or hapu, sub-tribe, iwi, tribe. And then we would even go further down to our whānau, our family. So you can see how that declaration to significant landmarks follows the waterways. For us as Māori, we don't see ourselves as separate to these landmarks, to the whenua. It's a part of who we are. And so when we look at whakatauki like this one, a beautiful whakatauki from Wanganui, ko au te awa, ko te awa ko au. I am the river and the river is me. So perhaps you might have heard this whakatauki before, and it really, when we look at this, it can give us a glimpse into the perspective of how interconnected the people of Whanganui feel to their river. It's a very special and significant river to them. When we look at the word whenua, and have a go at saying that, whenua, or land. Whenua translates to land and placenta. So the thinking behind that is whenua gives life to all living things. So in our tikanga, our custom, when a baby is born and the placenta is birthed, that placenta is then returned to the land. So the saying is, ka hoki te whenua ki te whenua. The whenua is returned back to the whenua. So the whenua translating to land or placenta, and that bigger perspective and idea being giving life to all living things in our world. Ka pai. In a Maori worldview, land isn't something that is owned, it's something that we belong to. And so we see that again with pepeha in terms of declaring, where we are from and our connection to that land as well. And we also see that in the concept of tūranga waiwai. So give that one a go. Tūranga waiwai. Tūranga waiwai. So Tūranga Waiwai talks about your standing place, where you're from and where you feel connected to whenua. So that could be, if you have a pepeha, that could be your pepeha. That could be somewhere that's really special to you. And so a reflection that I would put out there is to think about, where is your tūranga waiwai? How connected do you feel to that land? How do the kaupapa, the Maori values that we've spoken about previously in terms of kaitiakitanga, stewardship, manaakitanga, mutual hospitality, how do those values play into that connectedness you feel to your tūranga waiwai or standing place? This could be a hometown, it could be a place that your family are from, it could be even a beach or a special place that you like to go to, but a tūranga waiwai is your standing place in the world. So waiwai, legs, and tūranga, standing place. Ka pai. If you have any questions as well, please feel free to put them in the chat. And if it's related to what we're talking about at the time, I'm happy to answer that. I probably should have clarified at the beginning of the webinar. I don't think that there are any silly questions. And if you have any questions around this, feel free to ask on this webinar. Ka pai. So I wanted to have a look at Maori approaches to stewardship. So when I say stewardship, I'm talking about kaitiakitanga.
Apologies, everybody. It appears we're having a technology issue again, and Natalia will be back with us shortly.
My koto, I'm not too sure what is going on, but let me reshare and we'll continue off. Hopefully this doesn't happen again. Sorry once again. Ka pai. So to set the theme of our kōrero, here is a whakatauki, a proverb. Toi tū te whenua, whatu ngaro te tangata. It's a bit of a tongue twister. Toi tū te whenua, whatu ngaro te tangata. The land remains while the people disappear from sight. So this speaks about kaitiakitanga, stewardship, and the importance of us caring for our environment and looking after our land, because we are only here for a short period of time and we need to ensure that it's looked after for our future generations. Ka pai. So when we look to Maori approaches to kaitiakitanga, an example of this is Te Urewera, the forest within Tūhoe region. Te Urewera used to be a national park, and through treaty settlements, it's now has been returned to Tūhoe and is recognised as a legal entity. And so this was a world first at the time when this happened. It's not managed by the Crown anymore, but it's managed through Te Urewera board. And so Tūhoe have a really big part to play in terms of the kaitiakitanga looking after Te Urewera forest. Ka pai. So those of you who are in Rotorua, not too far from where you're based. and perhaps you might have gone there, beautiful Waikare Moana, beautiful forest in that area of the country. Ka pai. So when we reflect on Te Urewera being under the governance of Tūhoi, and their kaitiakitanga of Tūhoi, and how this isn't, I guess, this is a different way of looking at land and how land is not owned, but it's cared for, and land can have its own rights. We also saw this with the whanganui awa and a legal personhood of whanganui awa as well. So that's another example. These are great examples of how mātauranga Māori and Māori worldview and perspective can also be balanced with legal and governance systems. Another example in terms of Māori approaches to kaitiakitanga is intergenerational papakainga. So traditionally, Māori would live in papakainga or pā communities with their whānau, their families, their hapu sub-tribes or iwi tribes, and they would live together intergenerationally off the land. So they would care for the land. They were part of the land. Now we're seeing resurgence of papakainga throughout the country. My own whānau, we live on a papakainga now, intergenerationally with grandparents, parents, and tamariki children all living together and caring for the land. So in a modern day approach, in terms of practical families living and breathing the kaupapa of kaitiakitanga of stewardship, that is one way that's happening as well. So a reflection on that kōrero would be, what would it mean to centre Indigenous leadership in environmental policies and decisions globally, nationally? What would that look like to centre Indigenous leadership and involvement within the work that you do as well? So something to reflect on. Ka pai, wairua and mauri of the land. Here's a whakatauki. Te toto o te tangata he kai. Te oranga o te tangata he whenua. I'll say that again. Te toto o te tangata he kai. Te oranga o te tangata he whenua. Food provides the blood in our veins. Our health is drawn from the land. So again, when we think about that perspective, that worldview, the interconnectedness with the land, the health of the land also impacting our health as tangata, as people. So we've said these kupu before, but we'll say them again. Wairua, wairua. Wairua is the spiritual essence of all living things. And in Te Ao Māori, we believe that the land has wairua. It's their spiritual essence to our land. The land also has mauri, life force. And healthy land or healthy whenua has a strong mauri. And this is tied to the health of people as well. In Te Ao Māori, we have the concept of wāhi tapu, which is maybe something that you have come across in the work that you do in regards to the land, the whenua. Wāhi tapu are sacred sites. And so sites can be sacred for many reasons. Perhaps a historical event happened there, a battlefield, a burial ground. There's many different reasons that places can be wāhi tapu or sacred sites. Also the concept of rahui, which is a ban on a certain area. And so we see this quite often popping up with councils working alongside iwi tribes. And say, for example, if an accident had happened in a certain area, perhaps someone had passed away, then a rahui would be put on that area out of respect for the person who has passed away, and also out of respect for replenishing a certain area. So this is normally dictated by tikanga, so Maori customs, in terms of the concepts of tapu, sacredness, and noa, neutralness. So tikanga Māori flows into all of these concepts that we are talking about. Wāhi tapu and rāhui. Ka pai. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat and I can answer them. Awesome. So we're going to talk a little bit about the contemporary challenges in our modern world in Aotearoa in regards to whenua and Māori. So as we know, after the arrival of Europeans here in Aotearoa and the signing of Te Tiriti, there were many contemporary challenges, especially in regarding whenua, especially in terms of colonisation, land confiscation, and urbanisation. And so for Māori, the impact of this was disconnection from land. And we see this in the 1863 Rebellion Act, which was a piece of law that was put into place by the government of the time, which confiscated massive amounts of land, especially throughout the Waikato area, Taranaki area, and also on the east coast. But throughout Aotearoa, those areas were heavily impacted by this piece of law. And practically, you can Google search it, but practically what it meant was if an iwi, a tribe, was acting in a way that the government deemed to be rebellious, and this could be a range of things. It could be from, in Waikato's case, establishing a kingitanga, the king movement. It could be following a certain religion. If that was deemed to be rebellious, the government of the time would then come in and confiscate massive amounts of land because of that rebellious behaviour. This was paired with the 1863 Settlement Act, which then gave that government who had confiscated that land from iwi the right to sell that land to settlers. So it was, as you can imagine, very unjust. It didn't line up with the Te Tiriti that had just been signed, not even, 23 years prior to that. And so in regards to contemporary issues that we face now in Aotearoa, a lot of this history has an impact in regards to the disconnection and displacement of Māori on their whenua, on their land. So in terms of colonisation and land confiscation, when we talk about those topics, these pieces of law were designed and crafted to be able to acquire land for settlers. Then we have urbanisation as well. So in the 1960s, we had many Māori moving out to the city centres, such as Tāmaki Makaurau, Auckland, Te Whanganui Tara or Pōneke, Wellington, and leaving their home bases, their communities, and moving out into the urban areas. And so as you can imagine, over generations of this, we get a disconnect from land, disconnect from culture, and a sense of identity, who they are. So in terms of contemporary challenges, that's some context as to the current state of things. As well as this, not just for Māori, but for everyone, contemporary challenges such as climate change, pollution, unsustainable practices that are threatening our whenua and our culture as well. So I believe that is more of a global issue rather than just a Maori issue, and that disconnection to the whenua and land that a lot of us have. Ka pai. So a reflection on that. I know it can be pretty big topics, heavy kōrero, but a reflection on that is, how does disconnection from land show up in your community or workplace, or even in your personal life? I think a lot of us, we work in this way, in front of screens, on our phones, and sometimes we all need that reminder to go out and connect with the taiao as well. So ensuring that we're connecting back to the land and the whenua, the taiao, the environment. Ka pai. So I really wanted to have a bit of focus in this session, looking at place names, or ingoa wahi. So ingoa, the word ingoa means name, and wahi is a place. Ingoa wahi, place names. Ka pai. So what's in a name? Ingoa wahi. So our ingoa wahi, our traditional place names throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand, they hold important information on the history of certain areas, of the whakapapa, the genealogy, so maybe connections to different whānau, families, iwi, tribes, hapu, sub-tribes. Names hold a lot of that important information. Names can also hold information on safety, for example, water safety. So there's many examples throughout Aotearoa, New Zealand, where traditional place names hold information on maybe the tides, or where are appropriate places for swimming, where you shouldn't go swimming, those sorts of things. And so when we look at traditional place names, we want to think about the information that holds, and how we can, how that's relevant to our everyday life as well here when we're engaging with the taiao, the environment. So a big challenge that I have for everybody watching the webinar is to research the history of the place that you live. So wherever you live in Aotearoa, I want you to research the history of the place where you live. And that could even be the suburb that you live. If there's a traditional name, learn it and learn how to pronounce it. I know that sometimes it can be hard to unlearn place names that we've maybe mispronounced our entire life, and everybody around us says it that way. But the first step is awareness and understanding, oh, I think I've mispronounced this, and how could I say that better? So that would be my one big wero to you all on this webinar today. So after this webinar, go and have a bit of research, and I'm sure you will learn something new and really interesting as well. Ka pai. So I'm going to go through some place names. This is really a pronunciation piece. And so while I can't hear you, please feel free to repeat what I'm saying. And my pronunciation tip is to think about where the sounds are coming from in your waha, in your mouth, and the vowels. So in Te Reo Māori, our vowels are a, e, I, o, u. So if you think about where those vowels are coming from in your mouth, it will help tremendously with your pronunciation. Ka pai. So first we have te whanga nui a tara. Te whanga nui a tara. Wellington. So like I was saying, traditional place names hold history. Te whanga nui a tara, Wellington, quite often referred to as Pōneke as well. Te whanga nui a tara talks about the great harbour of Tara. And Tara was an explorer and a very old ancestor that lived in the Wellington region many, many years ago. Ka pai. O te poti. O te poti. Dunedin. O tautahi. O tautahi. Christchurch. Tauranga. Tauranga. Rotorua. I see there are a few coming in from Rotorua. Rotorua. So if you're someone who struggles with the rolling of your R's as well, a tip that I have for you is to think about the word ara, like a cow ara, and think about where your tongue is sitting when you get to the two D's, ara, and your tongue will be right behind your two front teeth at the roof of your mouth. So that's where we roll our R's from. So try with that word ara, ara, ra, ro, rotorua. Ka pai? Next up, taupo. Taupo. I quite often hear this getting mispronounced. And I actually saw a really funny picture online, and it was a picture of someone's toe and then a picture of a cat paw. So if you needed a visual cue to help you with the pronunciation of taupo, give that one a go. Taupo. Ka pai. Next up, kiri kiri roa. Kiri kiri roa. Hamilton. Kiri kiri roa. Tāmaki makoto. Tāmaki makoto. The name Tāmaki makoto talks about Tāmaki and mako, lover, ro, hundreds. Tāmaki who had many lovers. Kawero. Kawero. Te tai rāwhiti. Te tai rāwhiti, the East Coast. And lastly, taranaki. Taranaki. So give those a go. I've also sent through these slides and they'll be getting sent out to everybody. I have some broken down pronunciation for these place names. So if you want to give that a go, go through that. I'm just being aware of time and I want to leave some time for questions as well. So I'll skip this one for now. But to finish off this webinar, I wanted to leave you all with some huri-tau, some reflections. And I know I've been putting some questions forward during this 45 minutes to get you thinking about this topic in regards to te ao Māori, the Māori world, and connection to the whenua, the land. So some reflection questions is, where do you feel most connected to land? And so a lot of these questions, there's no right or wrong answer. I can't tell you what this is for you, but just things to get you thinking about this topic. So where do you feel most connected to land? Are there any places tied to your identity or your own family history? We spoke about tūranga waiwai, so having a reflection around where is that place for you and your family? And how connected do you feel to that place? And how would you like to be a kaitiaki to that place for your children, grandchildren, so that that can be treasured and passed down through generations? How do you show up? How do you show respect and care for the environment as well? So that's connected to that understanding of kaitiakitanga. How do you practice being a kaitiaki? So those are some reflections that you can take away from this webinar, and hopefully it will help you to understand how your Māori stakeholders that you are engaging with view the whenua. Māori are such a diverse range of people, and so some of these perspectives can change depending on your stakeholders. It's really important that you understand those stakeholders. And next week, we are doing a webinar on engaging with mana whenua. So that's something you'd like to dive more into, then please sign up to that webinar as well. But before we finish up, I wanted to give the opportunity to ask some pātai, some questions. So now's that time. If you have any questions, please feel free to fire them away in the chat, and I can do my best to answer them. And I always say no question is a silly question. If you've ever thought, oh, I really wanted to ask that, but I didn't know if it was appropriate or if this was the place, then now is that time to do so.
Thank you, Natalia. So as Natalia said, if you do have any questions, please pop those into the Slido box, and we'll just leave that Slido open for a minute or so just to see if any of you have any queries.
Also, I'll put up this while those are coming in and we're waiting to see if there's any questions. If you would like to connect with us online, here's our QR code. Feel free to scan it. You can connect with us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and you can have a look at our website and see the other work that we do in these spaces.
Thank you again, Natalia. It doesn't look like we have any questions coming through, but for our members who are online, if you do have anything that pops up and you think, I would like to know the answer to that, please feel free to send that through to me. But just as I've been speaking, I just see a couple of questions have come through, so I will just copy these across for you, Natalia. A group of us from Otipoti, we are in the south. Should we use K, I, K, Tahu, etc. always?
Oh, yeah, that is a good question. So I guess being in the south, you're right. Kaitahu is the iwi down there. I think that it would be really respectful to use the K instead of NG. But what would also be really meaningful is to make those connections with mana whenua, with Kaitahu as well. I'm not from Kaitahu, so I probably can't answer specifically, but I think that it is always nice if you're in that space to be able to give them that respect as well. So, ngā mihi. Did we have any other pātai? Any other questions, Jenny?
No, we've just had a couple of people come through and say, excellent webinar, thank you. And another one saying it's a nice talk. So thank you so much to you, Natalia, and also for everybody joining us today. And we will hopefully see you all online for our next webinar, which is also being presented by Natalia next week. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your afternoon.
Ngā mihi. Ka kite.